Good evening, Titans. And this is Mr. Simpson, and tonight we're going to be working with lesson 2.5, and we talk about 7 different properties, and 3 that we will use all throughout Algebra 1 course and many of your other courses, and the others as well, but these are a little more familiar to all of you already. So we'll state and apply the commutative, associative, and distributive properties and use them to perform mental computations. Alright, pause this slide, write these down. The commutative property of addition and the commutative property of multiplication. These 2 properties right here deal with order in which you add. As long as you are adding, it does not matter which order you add 2 numbers. So 2 plus 3 is the same as 3 plus 2. They're both equal to 5. Okay? That's only for addition. Multiplication is also true. 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 2 is also 6. These properties, or the commutative property, does not work for subtraction, and it does not work for division. Now if we take a look at the associative properties, the associative property has to do with grouping. And so if everything's being added, it doesn't matter which ones you group together to add first. So if you add A plus B first and then C, or if you would add B plus C first and then add A. So for example, if I have 2 plus 3 plus 4, and I decide, well, I'm going to add 2 plus 3 together first to get 5, then 5 plus 4 to get 9. Or if I have 2 plus 3 plus 4, and I decide I'm going to add 3 plus 4 together first to get 7, and then add the 2, I also get 9. And this would also be true for multiplication. And we'll explore some of that as we go on. But these are 2 very important properties that these are 2 very important properties that we will use in Algebra 1. I try to think of the commutative property as commuting, meaning if you're at home and you go to school, the route there and the route back is the same distance no matter which way you're going. So the order in which you're going, home to school or school to home. And the associative property, I think of it as, who you're grouped with. And, maybe you have A plus B plus C are all your friends, but today you're grouped here, and then you're grouped with C, or you have B plus C is grouped, but it's just who's grouped. And so it deals with parentheses and who you're grouped with. And then the last one that we're going to talk about that we use the most is the distributive property. And a lot of you have used the distributive property in the past, but we use this when it's multiplication over addition or multiplication over subtraction. And a lot of times we'll use it when we have a number on the outside and then 2 terms of an expression on the inside. And we want to take 3 times this and 3 times this, because it's 3 times that whole set of parentheses, so we have to take 3 times each piece. So then we get 3x plus 3 times 5 is 15. And I like to think of the distributive property as a distributor truck that's, the Pepsi Cola truck that's driving to the quick shop and dropping off some Mountain Dew. And then he drives to Casey's and he drops off some Mountain Dew, and so on. So I think of the distributive property as it being distributed through. Now these are 4 properties of equality, and I'm not going to say that you have to write these down in your notes. In fact, I think it's probably not worth your time to write all these down in your notes. The other 3, commutative, associative, and distributive, you need to have in your notes. But take a look at these. The reflexive just means that a number is equal to itself. Symmetric property we use when we're solving an equation. If you get 3 is equal to x, we typically rewrite it as x equals 3. That's a symmetric property. The transitive property is if A is equal to B, B equals C, then A is equal to C. So for example, if 2 plus 2 plus 2 is equal to 6, and 2 times 3 is equal to 6, well then we could say that 2 plus 2 plus 2 equals 2 times 3. And that's the transitive property. And then the substitution property we have used before as well. So we said we're going to use these skills to help do mental computation. And if you look at this first problem, it says we should add 37 plus 89 first. But since everything's being added, I could use the associative property and commutative properties here. So I would regroup, and I'd want to add 89 plus 11 first because that adds up to 100. And then I add 100 plus 37 to get 137. And so it's just we're using the commutative or associative properties just to help us with mental math. Here's another example of the associative property, commutative properties. Here, 25 times 13. Well, that's kind of hard to do in my head. Well, we're first going to just change the order of 13 and 25. And then at that same time, we're going to group the 25 times the 4 and do that first. Again, we don't have to go left to right here because everything's being multiplied. So the order in which we multiply and what we multiply together first does not matter. So again, we take 25 times 4 to get to 100. And 100 times 13 is 1300. Again, we'll do more of these, but it's just a way to manipulate these properties to help us do some things mentally in our head. And then here's the distributive property, and just a way of using this to help do mental computation. If I take 80 times 27, that's a little bit harder to do in my head. But if I break up 27 into 20 plus 7, and now distribute the 8 times the 20 and the 8 times the 7, well, 8 times 20 is 160. 8 times 7 is 56. Maybe I can store those numbers in my mind long enough to try to add those in my head and get the answer of 216. Again, not that you have to do mental math this way, but it's just one way of showing how we could use the distributive property to help us do mental computation if necessary. So if we just look at these properties here, I'd like you to pause it for a moment and write them down. See what you see if you can identify which property that is being represented for each one. And then after you start it back up, I'll reveal the answers. Alright, so hopefully you have these all written down and you're ready to get it checked out. So this first one, well, it's 5 plus 6 equals 6 plus 5. So what they did is they changed the order. So that would be the commutative property of addition. This next one, well, we have parentheses, but it's with multiplication and addition. Well, the one that contains multiplication and addition is the distributive property. Notice how we're distributing the 5 to both those terms. So that's the distributive property. Number 3 kind of looks like number 2, but again, it's all addition. It's 2 plus 3 plus 5, and then 2 plus 3 plus 5. And it looks like the order in which the numbers are written is identical, but they grouped the numbers differently. So that would be the associative property of addition. This next one kind of looks tricky. I mean, initially you think, there's multiplication and there's parentheses, so you might think it's the associative property, but if you look, the numbers aren't in the same order. One is 5, 6, 8, the other is 5, 8, 6. And since they're not in the same order, then it must be the commutative property. If you notice, the 6 and 8 are still together, it's just that they're in a different order. So that would be the commutative property of multiplication. Number 5, the distributive property. Number 6, again, if you look, it's 3, 8, 4, 3, 8, 4. So the order is the same, but they did group differently this time. So that's the associative property of multiplication. Here we have adding. We have 2, 8, 4, then 8, 4, 2. So the order is different. And if I look, the 8 plus 4 is still grouped together. So this must be a commutative property of addition. And then this last one, it's just multiplication, 7 times 9, 9 times 7, which would be the commutative property of multiplication. Hopefully you did well with that, and again, it took a little bit longer than I was hoping, but the main properties you need to come to class having a great understanding of are the commutative property, associative property, and the distributive property. Good night, Titans.
Made with Doodlecast Pro.